This week on the Crested Butte is Home podcast, my guest is Karen Hoskin, and she's an entrepreneur. She started many businesses over the years, but she's probably most well known for Montanya rum, and we are so lucky to have Montanyas here in Crested Butte. It's become a great place for those of us who live here on a second home or whatever to show off to our guests when they're in town, because it is one of those places that you just want to show off because it is such a great location and great rum and great cocktails. So we're really lucky to have that here in Crested Butte, and I was really lucky to get Karen on my show. Really appreciate that. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Crested Butte is Home podcast and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever else. Those reviews really help me get new listeners who might be interested in the show as well. So I really appreciate that. And one last thing. Usually I do a Crested Butte Real Estate Minute somewhere in the middle of the podcast, but this week Karen and I just talk a little bit about real estate, and so we will skip that. But as a reminder, my name is Frank Kinsella. This is my podcast, and my website is CrestedButteRealEstateAgent.com. I am a local real estate agent. I'd love to talk to you about real estate in Crested Butte or Gunnison. If you have any questions at all, please give me a shout, and let's get on with the show now. Today on the Crested Butte is Home podcast, my guest is Karen Hoskin. And Karen, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and where you grew up and all that fun stuff?
Sure. I was born in the Bronx, but my parents moved pretty quickly after that up to Maine. Oh. So I grew up in Maine for most of my young life. My dad worked for the Bank of Maine till I was in about fourth grade, and we moved a lot. We moved like 11 times when I was young. So.
In Maine? All
in Maine, yeah.
Gotcha.
As he was getting promoted to different branches and then ultimately to the headquarters of the bank. And then about the time I was in fourth grade, he said, I'm done with this bank thing, and he opened up his own law practice in a little town in central Maine called Winthrop, and that's where I grew up. And then went to college in Massachusetts, up in the Berkshires. Met my husband, who's from Grand Junction, and was just sort of progressively we've been together for almost 30 years now, and we were progressively drawn toward the mountains of Colorado. We were in Flagstaff for 10 years. We were in Silverton, Colorado for 10 years. And now we've been here for almost 8.
Wow. Okay. So when you were in Maine, did you grow up skiing and biking and doing some of the same things I assume you do here, or?
Yeah, skiing for sure, and hiking. That was kind of before the days of mountain biking. My mountain biking days more started in college in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And even then, it wasn't a thing yet, but I became obsessed right about 1989 or something like that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's just jump into it. So you're a bit of what maybe some people call a serial entrepreneur. So tell us about some of the things that you're involved with.
Things I'm involved with now, or have been over time?
Both.
Okay. So I would say that my first real entrepreneurial venture was back in 1998. I was pregnant with my first child, and I had a friend ask me if I would design a logo for her company. Okay. I'd never done a logo before. She asked me because she liked my wedding invitations from the year before or 2 years before. Uh-huh. So I designed a logo for her, and she loved it. It's still actually, an active logo on a store in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Awesome.
And so that began this funny little cavalcade of people asking me to do their graphic design and web design work eventually when websites became a thing, and ads, create ads for magazines and things like that. So it eventually became a full-fledged business where I had an employee and about 40 clients that I was doing all kinds of different work for. I loved the work. I can't say I, made a fabulous living off of it. Uh-huh. I think I was giving away a lot of my time and energy. Sure. I did a business analysis at one point and realized that I was really only making money off building websites for people, and the rest of it was almost a loss. So that lasted for about 12 years, and then it was at the end of that point that I felt like I was giving a lot of that work away to other people's cool entrepreneurial dreams, and I thought I want to keep something at the end of the day. And that was when my husband and I were on a beach having a rum cocktail, and he said, "What do you want to do next?" And I said, "I want to make rum." So that led to Montanya Distillers, which is now 10 years in. And about a year into Montanya Distillers, I let all of my clients from my graphic design business go because I couldn't juggle them both. And in the middle of all of that, I took a contract with a Fortune 500 company and worked directly for them as a graphic designer for about 18 months. And that was fairly soul-crushing. I was like designing Disney princess hook rails for Home Depot and things like that. So I decided that was not the path that I wanted to continue with. And then I, just a year ago, started with a business partner here in Crested Butte, started Zoetica, which is a company that's focused on helping people to refuse single-use plastic all day long, every day, as they travel, as they navigate, work and play and moving around a city or a town, anything like that. Just always having a strategy to say, no, thank you, I don't need that, I've got my own.
Awesome. It's
pretty fun.
Cool. Well, I'm sure that could be a whole nother episode, but we're going to concentrate on Montanya's just because it's more well known, at least here in Crested Butte, probably. So, you already started it, but so why in the mountains you'd probably think whiskey maybe or something else. So you're on a beach, you like rum, and that's basically it. Why you do rum here in the mountains of Colorado?
Well, interestingly, my love affair with rum goes back about 30 years. So I've been a rum fanatic for a very long time. I had my first sip of good rum back in 1988, and that really began to get me excited about the spirit. I don't drink very much, and I have some food allergies that also extend to spirits. Okay. So I can't drink everything, and I can always, it seems, drink good rum. So that led to me buying bottles of good rum and really sleuthing out different types of rum and becoming becoming someone who understood and knew how rum was made and visiting rum distilleries. So that went on for 20 years before I started a rum distillery. But also, I would say, I started my career as a bartender. Was in the service industry for a good 12 years of my life. Yeah. I always loved cocktails. I've always loved making cocktails for people. And so I would say that the bar operation at Montanya has been almost an equal love to the making of the rum itself, really helping people to appreciate and understand how versatile rum is and how amazing the cocktails can be with rum. So that was kind of the genesis of that business. However, I also wanted to make something that was made in the United States, that would never be tempted to be sort of offshored and sent to China for production to save money. I wanted to create something that there could be some local pride about, that could be a year-round business instead of seasonally driven, that could employ a good number of people at potentially higher than average wages in Crested Butte, and that might, allow people to really cultivate a career working for the company as opposed to just just any old job where they might get laid off for half the year. Yeah,
or have nowhere to move up or whatever it sounds like.
Right.
Well, so I'm pretty familiar with brewing beer, but not at all with rum distillers. So how about the Cliff Notes version? How, if you can,
Sure.
How does that start?
So all rum has to meet two legal requirements. One is that it has to be made from a derivative of sugarcane, and that it has to be distilled to below 190 proof.
Okay.
So if you distill sugarcane to above 190 proof, then it becomes vodka. It is legally classified as vodka. So anything can be made into vodka if it's distilled to a high enough proof. Potatoes, corn, wheat, rye, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It just becomes vodka once it hits a certain proof.
Okay.
So part of what's fun about making rum is that there is a long, rich tradition of rum actually in the Colorado mountains. I know that sounds like a stretch, and I don't tell that story very often, but back in the day of the sort of mining boom, there were a lot of miners coming from both coasts, from San Francisco and from Boston. And rum was the spirit of those cadres of miners. They would bring barrels of rum up into the mountains, and they would bring, whatever their personal supply was. And so back in the day, in the mining days in the Colorado mountains, there was no whiskey. Rum was the currency for women of the night. It was the currency for, trade and barter. And it was what people were drinking in the mining camps up in the San Juans and the Elks and, really heavily in the San Juans, which is where we started the company.
Yeah.
Because there was just more mining there than there was here.
Sure.
But so that's, that there isn't a stretch to be made about bringing rum back to the mountains of Colorado. But also really the aha moment for me was being in Guatemala and realizing that there's this whole long, rich tradition of rum in the mountains. I had only ever really understood it as an island tradition.
Yeah.
And in Guatemala, companies like Ron Zacapa take their rums up to the mountains in casks to age at 7,000 feet because it acts as a catalyst. So in the rum making process, we get our sugarcane from family farmers in Louisiana. They're actually as close to us as most rum distillers are to their sugarcane. A lot of people think, rum in the mountains? Don't you make rum right next to where sugarcane is grown? But most commercial sugarcane is grown in Brazil and Paraguay and Uruguay, sometimes in Fiji, sometimes in India. Most of the Caribbean rum distillers of any scale that are not just sort of growing a little personal crop right next to their small stills are bringing it 1,200 miles.
It's actually coming from South America anyway.
Exactly. So we're as close to our sugarcane as most rum distillers. And then we put it in a fermentation tank. We ferment it for 6 to 7 days. That produces about 17% alcohol in the fermentation, which isn't enough to make a spirit. Okay. It's more than enough to make a beer. So we then put it in the stills. We have open flame alembic copper pot stills from Portugal that were hand hammered for us. You heat it with an open flame from below, and our still bases were designed by REG here in Crested Butte.
Awesome.
So we did a really fun project with them to make it, basically a highly efficient and safe way of making rum. And then once it heats, the alcohols boil out of the still, vaporize out of the still at different temperatures. The good alcohols are typically at the center of the batch. Okay. The beginning alcohols are typically, they can have methanol in them. There's less methanol in rum, but those are kind of not the most flavorful alcohols. And then the ones that come off at the end are often really mixed up with good and not so good alcohols, and so we want to leave those out. But if you only took the middle of the batch, it would be relatively flavorless. So the real art of making good rum is choosing how much of the transitions from the heads to the hearts and the hearts to the tails to include in the center batch. That means, that's where the good esters and the good congeners and the flavorful things in the spirit are. It's right at that transitional point. And if you don't take enough, then you have a pretty flavorless rum. And if you take too much, then you have a rum that tastes, like some sort of a spirit that was made by a hack, basically,
Okay.
or like, those spirits that are made out in the woods, where people drink them and they get a little wonky and blind. Right. You don't want that. So it's really, that's where the art is, and that's what our distillers are exceptional at and well trained at, and that Bryce and I work really hard to provide oversight and management of, because I've always been sort of the super palate of the group. I'm the one that came with the rum love and came with the discernment of what makes a good rum. Mm-hmm. But we've been lucky enough to have really discerning distillers working with us who can tell when it's good and bad. And if for some reason we don't trust that instinct, then we just micromanage it a little more closely.
Gotcha. So so what happens if it just doesn't seem like a good batch? It's gone, throw it away, or...
You could redistill it, because if it's not a good batch, then probably it's because you mixed up the alcohols in the wrong way. Okay. And so you put it back in the still and you separate the alcohols out again, and you might actually get a better batch. We've never had to do that because our batches are small and we are really, we say obsessively crafted. And people are always like, haha, obsessively crafted. Like, who wouldn't say that? Yeah. But it's really true. We're really cautious and careful about what alcohols we take. And one of the benefits of being at elevation is that the alcohol boils at a much lower temperature at 9,000 feet than it does at sea level. So our alcohols get less mixed up and kind of brutalized in the still by the boiling process. Okay. So we're able to separate them more easily because of our elevation.
Gotcha. Interesting. And so then, additionally, you have multiple types of rum. Mm-hmm. So how are those in the process determined?
So everything we make comes off of the still exactly the same. Okay. And it differentiates in the aging process and in the type of barrel that it goes into, and in the just generally into the way that we work with the spirit inside the barrel. And then also the finishing process and the proofing process at the end. Okay. So the two flagship that we started with, the Platino and the Oro, are both aged about 18 months. Okay. And the Platino ages and has color when it comes out of the barrel. We filter it with coconut husk carbon, which pulls the color out but leaves the flavor behind. Okay. The Oro goes into a fresh, wet whiskey barrel, which means it has a little more of the character of the whiskey that was in the barrel and a little bit more of the color that was in the barrel because the barrel's fresher. And we don't do any of that carbon filtration with that Oro. So it's darker, it's more rich, it's a little more complex. The Platino's designed to be lighter, cleaner, kind of more appealing to someone who's a light spirits fan. And then we have two more that we've released in the last 3 years. The Exclusiva, which is 1 in every 10 barrels that we distill, we put away in that stock. Okay. And it ages for 3 full years. Okay. Starts in an American white oak barrel that held whiskey, transitions to a French oak barrel that had Sutcliffe Vineyards port, which is down in the southwestern corner of Colorado, down near Cortez. Okay. And then the finishing barrel, that's the Exclusiva just has the 2 barrels. The first one is Law's Whiskey House from Denver. The second one is Sutcliffe Vineyards from southwest Colorado, McElmo Canyon. And then the Anniversaria that we just released in April as a celebration of our 10th anniversary has actually 3 barrels in series. So it goes from the Law's Whiskey House to the Sutcliffe Port and finally to a bourbon barrel from Peach Street Distillers, which is up in Palisade. Each of those barrels contributes really unique characteristics. So the Law's Whiskey House contributes some pear, some red chili, some coffee notes. The port barrel is like a tannic kind of wine vinous quality that I love, that's a little drier, unusual in a rum. And then that third barrel contributes like these peach and cherry kind of terroir notes from the valley, up the Grand Valley in the west corner of the state, and it's really a tribute to some of the distilleries that helped us early on in our evolution as a company, answered a lot of our questions, inspired us, were great mentors, or provided expertise to our company as we were getting going. So
awesome. And that one was also a 3-year aged?
That one is 4 years aged, and we only released 1 barrel of that in April, but it's my intention to release another anniversary barrel of it in April of 2019, probably with a slightly different barrel profile.
Gotcha.
So I'd like to continue to collaborate with Colorado distilleries and wineries that I think are doing beautiful things, and that we are inspired by, and just kind of keep up that tradition.
That's super cool. I interviewed Dave from Irwin Brewing, and he was mentioning that they do a lot of things with other brewers. It sounds like the distillery, it's the same kind of thing. You guys toss ideas around and do some different things that way.
Exactly. We love to collaborate. We love to put different things in different barrels for different periods of time, and it's just a question of whether it's a successful experiment at the end.
Yes, which is...
The Anniversaria was a very successful experiment. I think it's the best rum that, we've ever made as a company, and the 4 years of age just mellows, everything, continues to mellow everything, so it's a great sipper, and people just like to be kind of part of that celebration, which was nice. Yeah. And we donated $5 from every bottle that we sold to the Rocky Mountain Biological Lab.
Oh, cool.
And we donated $5 from every bottle that we sold to the Women's Distillery Guild, which is promoting gender diversity in the distillery world, which is quite... has low percentages, maybe 10% or less of people working in distilling are women. So $10 of every one of those bottles went to a philanthropic cause, which we were really proud of, and just presented that check to Rumble last week.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. Well, in the middle of my show, I usually do, and we're going to totally change subjects here. It's a little awkward, but we're going to do it anyway. But usually, so I'll do what I call the real estate minute. And so I wanted to ask you, as a local business owner, who I'm sure sees your employees struggle. So what are your thoughts on housing in Crested Butte, and what business owners can do, and what the town can do, and what the county can do?
So I still don't own a house in Crested Butte, and I, between my husband and myself, we own 3 companies, and we work really hard and have for a long time. Raised our kids, from 6th grade on through the school here. We don't own a house in Crested Butte, primarily because we don't think we can really afford the kind of house that we would choose to live in. So we've been waiting until we were empty nesters to maybe think about a condo or something, which just happened about a month ago. But in the last year and a half, about 4 of our employees have purchased homes, which we're really proud of.
Awesome.
Because that's, to us, is a quantitative measure of whether people in our workforce are actually being able to meet their own personal life goals. It's really important to me that they not just be sort of getting by and paycheck to paycheck and coping. So that's a really big upside of what's been going on for us as a company. But I'm such a huge supporter of what this town and community have been doing around providing for long-term affordable housing. I think, the project over by the rec path with all the smaller homes, single-family homes, is just beautiful. And I'm so proud that our community got to have all those small homes right in the center of town.
Sure.
I was really a supporter of Anthracite. I think that's a great project. I think it looks great.
Yeah.
And I think this new one that's coming online down by Town Park, down by Rainbow Park, is going to be amazing. So I follow it pretty closely. I stay involved. I give tons of feedback when asked. I don't necessarily volunteer it. I try to be a good informant as an employer. But I think I think we are at risk. There's no question. Sure. I feel it. I've talked to a number of realtors who feel it. There's sort of a new cadre of people coming in, looking at property in our community, and the prices are going way up, and many of us may have missed our window of opportunity.
Sure.
How we preserve workforce housing for the long term is going to be a big challenge.
Sure, and it's a big challenge for employers too. I'm sure some of the local businesses weren't open seven days a week this summer, which is kind of crazy.
Exactly.
But well, let's move on from that and move towards the actual tasting room then. So you already mentioned it that's almost your. So which one do you like more? I guess can you say?
Well, I think if I had just a bar and restaurant and didn't make rum, then I would probably always be slightly disappointed with the outcome of the cocktails. Because first of all, I'm a rum girl. Mm-hmm. I love rum cocktails. Second of all, there's never been a rum that I love in cocktails as much as I love our rum. So there's a synergy between the two that's really important to me. But when I go out on the road and I'm working in liquor licensed venues, I'm constantly making cocktails with other people's spirits, like liqueurs that I work with, or Amaros, eau de vies, just combinations with our rum that are delicious. And so it really isn't all just about Montanya rum. But I love having people walk in to our establishment and have an experience. And I think that's one of the things that we offer the most to Crested Butte, is that it's really different from just a bar experience or a restaurant experience. It's it's something that for many people they've never had the opportunity to do before, to see something being made right in front of them, like a spirit. That people are more accustomed to that maybe in the beer world, but even with some of the folks that travel from far away and come here, they haven't even been really in the brewery world much.
Sure.
So they love being able to watch it being made. They love having a tour and learning about how rum is made, and then being able to sit down and have a drink and some food and, chef-driven cuisine, which is relatively new for us in the last 5 years. Yeah. It's so fun in there. And then to be able to throw events for local nonprofits, like KBUT or Rumble or whomever, that seems like such icing on the cake to me, to have an easy mechanism by which to support the local community.
Yeah. A lot of things are moving towards craft. There's craft everything. Do you feel like you were pretty early in on that? And how much farther do you think craft distilling is going to go?
That is a really good question. We were in the first 5 or so distilleries that were founded in Colorado. There are now somewhere between 70 and 75 craft distillers. So
you were at the start for sure.
So a Denver Post journalist called us OGs the other day in an article, and I was like, yes. To be an OG when you've only been doing something for 10 years is saying something. But we... I think we were on the early end of the craft distilling movement, but we've been really benefited by being on the far end of the brewing and the wine making movement, which have in Colorado really informed the law and the distribution, and so they kind of paved the way for us. So we haven't had to make the road in the way that some of those other companies really had to pave the road for themselves.
Gotcha.
We're really lucky in Colorado because we have some of the best licensing laws related to distilling of any state in the union, which makes it really easy to do what we do in Colorado. I wouldn't want to move to Texas or California. I wouldn't be able to do what I do.
Really?
We wouldn't be able to have a bar that's open, till... we can be open till 2 a.m., people always think we are forced by law to close early. I'm like, no, we're forced by strong rum drinks to close early. We don't want people necessarily drinking like that kind of fuerte cocktail at 2 a.m.
One hand, yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Well, there were a couple things you mentioned I wanted to go back to. So you started in Silverton.
Mm-hmm.
Why the move up here to Crested Butte?
So it became pretty clear about 8.5 years ago, that we were outgrowing Silverton in a lot of ways. Partly our kids, we had a fifth grade and a seventh grader, and the Silverton school, this year had 44 kids from K through 12th grade and didn't graduate a single senior.
Wow.
So we knew that the trajectory of education was going to be hard in Silverton. It was just really small. But it was incredible for the early grades because it's an expeditionary learning curriculum, which is influenced by, which grew out of the Outward Bound program. So they had an incredible early education. So there was that, but also the town government didn't know exactly how to handle us. We had two businesses. We were the largest private sector employer in our county. It's a tiny county, but we still were. And so we started being regulated in some ways that ended up feeling very disproportionate to other businesses in the community. We ended up in court with a arbitrary and capricious lawsuit against the town of Silverton, which is arbitrary and capricious just basically means that the government is enforcing one set of laws on one business and ignoring that set of laws for a different business.
Gotcha.
And we they settled out of court, basically made the case that their employees were poorly trained, and we felt that was just going to continue, that there wasn't going to be a way to kind of get over that, and that we might spend the next 5 years putting a lot of our time and energy and resources into sort of fighting for legitimacy in that community in the regulatory environment. We never fought for legitimacy in the community itself, and we had an amazing experience there. But so we started looking at opportunities to move, and I have been coming to Crested Butte for quite a long time, since 1990, with my girlfriends for mountain bike trips and for hiking trips and staying out at the Pioneer guest cabins. And I just have always loved it. And it was the first thing I said to my husband. And even though he was born and raised in Grand Junction, he'd never been to Crested Butte. So we came over for a weekend, and he just got it right from the first moment. He was like, yes, of course. Like, I get it. This is, it's like Silverton times 5 with really functional kind of government offices and Riverland.
Yeah.
So Silverton didn't have anything like Riverland really either. So all of those things, we had 2 businesses at the time, and all of those things just sealed the deal for us. And it's been so confirming. We had some challenges finding the right building. We moved around a bit.
Yeah.
But we were stabilized by having a building that we've had for almost 8 years out in Riverland.
Gotcha.
That, if we didn't have what we needed in town, we could distill out there.
Right.
And so really, ultimately, it was still way better than what we had in Silverton.
Gotcha. Have you ever, when so we just had Vinatalk in Crested Butte, which was supposed to be this thing that connected the old-timers and the newcomers, and the old-timers were miners, and then there was the tourism and recreation and things coming in. Have you thought about that with, like, a Silverton, what Crested Butte was in the 60s and 70s? Have you ever, thought about that much? Is there a correlation there, or am I just making that up?
Sort of. I have thought about that a lot, and I think Silverton has made a concerted effort to not be anything like Telluride or Crested Butte or even Ridgeway, Ouray.
Sure.
That was really my epiphany moment in leaving that community after 10 years, was that I just needed to let Silverton be what it was.
Okay.
I needed to not care for my own purposes what the community might be or become or not become, there was a really vibrant business community kind of growing in Silverton for some of the years that we were there, and then everybody sort of left, and it was just down to a couple of us, and we were having challenges with the regulatory environment. So it was. I really think that Silverton's never probably going to be at all like Crested Butte. I don't think it's on that path. I think Silverton Mountain, if anybody, would have made that happen, and they haven't.
Yeah.
So I'm good with Silverton kind of being what it is and preserving that kind of funky, different, non-ski town, non-progressive identity that it has. But I do also on many days think it's totally haunted by some crazy spirit that just like makes things hard there, and it's like a refuge for people who are pretty comfortable not having business success. They love just kind of doing the work a day, blue collar thing, and I think that's great too, and there's room for that. But that wasn't the path we were on.
Sure.
And I love Crested Butte for the fact that it has more economic diversity. It has professors from Western. It's got teachers. It has, people who are teleworking to, humongous corporations around the country. And then it's got these incredibly high-quality restaurants. In Silverton, I was like, if I eat one more hamburger and fries, I'm going to, spontaneously combust. So I love the cuisine here, and I love that everything doesn't go straight up out of town, you can hike and bike regardless of what your energy level is that day. There's something for every energy level, which was not true in Silverton. Literally, like you step 100 yards outside of town and you're going straight up something.
Sure. Yeah. The mountain biking in particular there is
it's rough.
Extremely hard, and it's going to be all day. There's no quick and easy there.
Same with the backcountry skiing, like skinning up anything. You're just like, ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing I wanted to go back to, you mentioned being a woman in the distilling industry. So what's it like to be a woman entrepreneur in this town? Because I feel like there are a whole bunch of super strong women with strong businesses. So talk about that a little.
That has been one of the coolest things for me about being not only a business owner in Crested Butte, but also being a business owner on Elk Avenue. Literally, I feel like the majority of businesses on Elk Avenue are owned by women, or part owned, 50% owned by women, or they're partnerships of women with their husbands or with their brother-in-laws or whatever it happens to be, and they're killing it, literally. Like they're working incredibly hard. They have really diverse groups of employees. They're shipping things out of town. They're making things and putting things together, and but we do occasionally still suffer the consequences of a challenging gender environment in our country.
Sure.
I was hanging out with Allison from Big Al's, who I just love, and we had our moments of over the summer, like, so what'd you get this summer? And she told me some crazy stories about people who won't give her the time of day as a blonde woman in a bike shop, even though she is she runs that joint from top to bottom, and she could fix anything that you put in front of her. But she's been treated with some disrespect, even by, progressive mountain bikers. So we still struggle, but I think we've created this beautiful environment on Elk Avenue where it's just normal. And we don't have to talk about it. We don't have to advocate for ourselves for the most part. There's nobody trying to undermine us, which is more common in my industry. The spirits world is really, I think if Allison went out into the regular bike world, she would find herself to be much more of a minority as well.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have this little gentle world that we live in here to come home to.
That's good. Yeah. Well, let's start to wrap it up a little bit. And we've kind of already gone over this a little bit, but I'll ask it again because it's a question I always ask. So Crested Butte is home for you. So why Crested Butte after these 10 years now?
I just absolutely love this place. It has every single thing that I want to do with my free time. So people asked me 1,000 times when we were moving the business, like, why didn't you go to Denver? It's so much easier.
Sure.
You're freight, you'd have a bigger group of people to appreciate and call your spirit like their hometown spirit.
Yeah.
Why didn't you move to Denver? And I would die in Denver. I personally, and my husband too, and we just would not thrive there.
Yeah.
We're not city people. I was raised in rural Maine. Bryce was raised in Grand Junction, back when it was more rural than it is now. Yeah. And this is where we want to be when we wake up in the morning and when we go to bed at night. And in the hours that we're not working, we're always in the backcountry. So I would say that, many people choose to live where they have to work and then vacation or
Sure.
weekend in their favorite little towns. And that has never been our mode. We've always lived where we wanted to live and brought our work there or created our work there.
Yeah, like so many of us, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Where can people learn more about Montanya's? And so, say it again.
Zoetica.
Zoetica, thank you.
Yes. Montanya, they can go to montanyarum.com. So MONTANYA rum.com. And then for Zoetica, it's zoeticalife.com. And that's ZOETICA life.com. Zoetica means coming back to the state of having come back to life.
Oh, okay.
And so zoeticalife.com, and they can stop in and have a tour 7 days a week.
And what's the address? Across the street from
212 Elk Avenue. I literally thought of every address we've ever had in the last 10 years, and then my house address and my office address, and
they all just blurred into one.
They all just went.
Basically across the street from the post office. We'll put it that way. So,
that works.
Any questions I didn't ask that I should have?
I mean, I think the only thing that is really unmentioned and really unusual about our company is that we are the first craft distillery of those 75 in Colorado to become a B Corp. So we meet the highest, most rigorous standards of environmental practice and social practice and community philanthropy, and it's basically a 4-category certification, and we scored higher than 75% of B Corp certified companies. So we're really doing some different things in terms of how we practice our business compared to other distilleries in the state and in the U.S.
Awesome. Well, one final question. Who else should I interview?
I was thinking that you should interview Renee Newton. She is the founder of Fireweed Ferments. She was a distiller for Montanya, and she's been, a very key part of our operations. But like a number of our employees, they kind of come and work with us and get inspired about entrepreneurship and learn some techniques and methods, and often go on to start their own businesses. I would say we've had 5 or 6 employees do that. Uh-huh. And she went on to found Fireweed Ferments. She makes kombucha and kimchi and sauerkraut, and she makes it in Crested Butte, and she sells it in Crested Butte, and she has a commercial kitchen up on the mountain, and her products are beautiful, and there's just a lot to be learned about the science and the art of fermentation and how important it is to the human microbiome. I think she'd be fascinating to talk to.
That sounds really good. Thank you. That's a new one, so that's even better. So, excellent. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You bet.
And,
thank you.
See you around.
All right.